The risky choice, Cale ran quietly through the broken streets, the smallest child clutched in his arms, the other two children followed, holding the widow's hands, their eyes wide with fear. The ruins were dark, shadows stretching like fingers across cracked walls. Every step he took made the ground groan, and he feared it would alert the patrols. The widow ran beside him, her hair flying in the wind, her eyes scanning the sky. "They will come," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They will take them back if they find us." Cale's heart tightened. He had expected danger, but the sight of her desperation made it real. He knew he could not turn back. Not now, not when the children's lives depended on him. The streets twisted like a maze, walls crumbling on every side. Cale led them down narrow alleys, ducking behind piles of rubble. His mind worked fast, remembering every shortcut, every shadow that could hide them. The children clung to him, their small hands clutching his jacket. One little girl whispered, "Will they hurt us?" Cale's throat tightened, but he forced a calm voice, "No. I will protect you." A sudden hum of engines made them freeze. Above them, a patrol drone hovered, scanning the streets with a bright red light. Cale pressed the children to the ground, hiding behind a broken wall. The widow's hand shook as she held her youngest child close, whispering, "Please, save them." The drone's light passed over them, a cold fear running down Cale's spine. When it moved on, he exhaled slowly, his chest tight with relief. They kept moving, faster now, over uneven ground. Dodging obstacles, the children's small feet pounded softly against the stones, their breaths quick and shallow. Cale's mind raced. He had to find a safe place, a place the patrols would not reach. He spotted an abandoned building up ahead, its walls broken but still standing. "It's there," he whispered, pointing. "We can rest inside for a while." Inside, the air was stale, dust floating in rays of red light from broken windows. The children sank to the floor, exhausted, their eyes half closed from fear and fatigue. The widow collapsed beside them, clutching her chest, tears streaking her face. Cale knelt down, setting the smallest child in his lap, feeling her tiny body tremble. He opened his bag, offering a few scraps of food he had found. The children ate slowly, their hands shaking, but hunger stronger than fear. Cale looked out through a broken window, the city dark and threatening. He knew this was only temporary. The patrols would continue searching, but he could not leave them alone, not for a second. The widow's voice broke through his thoughts, soft but clear. "I know it is dangerous, but please, human, keep them safe." Cale felt a heavy weight in his chest. The responsibility was enormous, yet something inside him stirred. A strange connection, a promise forming in his heart. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the ruins, a distant alarm, a warning. Cale's heart jumped. The patrols were closing in faster than he expected. He gathered the children, whispering urgently, "We must move again, now." The widow grabbed his arm, fear and hope mixing in her eyes. Cale nodded, determination burning inside him. "We will make it. I will protect you all." They stepped out into the night again, shadows swallowing them. Each step forward was risky, but turning back was not an option. Cale led them deeper into the ruins, each alley, each corner a test of his courage. The children clung to him, trembling but trusting. The widow followed silently, her heart pounding with hope and fear. Somewhere ahead lay safety, or maybe more danger. But Cale would not let them fall. He was their protector now, and he would fight for them, no matter what.
The cry in the darkness. The city was quiet, too quiet for a place that was once alive with alien voices. Buildings leaned to one side, broken and hollow, their windows dark like empty eyes. Red light from the distant sky painted everything in an eerie glow. Human explorer Cale walked slowly through the ruins, his boots crunching on shattered glass and debris. He had come here for supplies, not for trouble, but something in the air made his heart beat faster. A soft sound reached his ears, almost like a whisper, almost like crying. Cale froze, listening, tilting his head to catch the noise. The sound came again, this time louder, more desperate, a small alien voice calling for help. He followed it carefully, ducking behind broken walls, peering around corners, and then he saw her. A woman, her skin pale in the red light, her clothes torn and dirty. Around her were 3 small children, huddled together, shivering and scared. Cale's chest tightened. He had seen pain before, but this was different. The woman's eyes were filled with fear, but also something else. Hope. She stepped forward slowly, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. Her voice was trembling, soft, almost broken. Please, help my children. Save them. Save us. Kale's mind raced. He knew humans were not supposed to interfere here. Alien laws were strict, and helping them could bring danger, maybe even death. But the children were crying now, tiny hands reaching out for him. One little boy's tears fell on the ground, his eyes wide and trusting. Kale took a step forward, and the woman's lips trembled. Adopt them. Please, end our loneliness. Her words struck him, heavy, impossible to ignore. A shiver ran down his spine as distant sounds echoed through the ruins. Alien patrols were near. Kale knew he had only moments to decide. Every instinct told him to run, to leave this place and stay safe. But another Yaz. Her voice inside him whispered differently. It told him that these children needed him, that the woman's wish was not just desperate, it was real. He looked down at the smallest child, curled against the woman's leg, shivering. A pang of sadness and anger filled him, the unfairness of their situation burning in his chest. The air suddenly felt heavier, a low hum vibrating through the ruins. Kale could hear the mechanical steps of patrols approaching, their lights cutting across broken walls. The woman clutched her children tighter, her voice barely a whisper. Please, don't leave us. Kale's eyes met hers, and in that moment, he knew what he had to do. He bent down slowly, holding out his hands. I will help you. I promise. Relief flooded her face, but it was mixed with fear because danger was still very close. The first step was always the hardest, and Kale took it. He reached for the smallest child, lifting her gently. The woman watched, tears streaming down her face. Behind them, the city waited. Dark, dangerous, full of threats. But for the first time in many nights, hope flickered in the cold red light. Kale carried the child in his arms, ready to face whatever came next. Shelter among ruins. Kale led the children and the widow through a narrow tunnel, the city's ruins closing around them like a cage. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of burnt metal lingered in every corner. The children's small hands clung to his arms, their eyes wide with fear. Even the widow's steps were cautious, her gaze constantly scanning for danger. Finally, they reached a building that had somehow survived the decay. Its walls were cracked, windows shattered, but it was safe, at least for a moment. Kyle pushed the door open slowly, the sound echoing in the empty space. Inside, the air was heavy and still, sunlight streaming in through holes in the roof. The children collapsed on the floor, too tired to speak, too afraid to move. Kyle knelt beside them, brushing dust from their clothes. You are safe for now, he said, though even he wasn't sure if it was true. The widow sank to her knees, holding her children close, whispering soft words of comfort. Her eyes met Kyle's for a moment, a silent question in her gaze. Kale shook his head slightly. We must stay quiet. They will find us if we make noise. He looked around the building, searching for a place to rest, to plan their next move. Old furniture lay scattered, broken, and covered in dust. He cleared a small corner and laid down some blankets he had. The children huddled together, curling into small balls, trying to feel warm and safe. Kale sat against the wall, his mind racing. He remembered what the widow had said. The patrols would not stop. They were relentless. He had to find a way to protect the children, to keep them hidden. He glanced at the smallest child sleeping in his lap, her tiny chest rising and falling. A pang of fear struck him. What if they discovered her while he slept? The widow's soft voice broke the silence. You are strong, stronger than anyone I know. Kale looked up, startled. But she just smiled weakly, her eyes full of gratitude and worry. Night fell, the building dark and cold, shadows creeping across the walls. Kale kept watch, his hands resting on the children, listening for any sound outside. Every creak, every whisper of wind made him tense. Suddenly, a low hum echoed from outside, unfamiliar, mechanical. Kale froze, listening carefully, the children stirring beside him. It's okay, he whispered, though his own heart raced. He peeked through a broken window and saw a patrol drone scanning the streets. Its red light swept across the ruins, close, too close. Kale pressed the children closer, holding them tight. The widow held her youngest, her lips trembling, whispering, Please, keep them safe. Time stretched, each second heavy with fear. The drone moved on, but Kale knew it was only temporary. They could not stay here forever. The city was too dangerous. He needed a plan, a path to safety beyond the ruins. The children finally slept again. Their small bodies relaxed against him. Kale stared at them, feeling a strange bond forming. He had never cared for anyone like this before. The widow watched quietly, her hands folded, tears streaming down her face. Kale promised himself silently, I will not let anyone hurt them, no matter what. Outside, the ruins were alive with danger, patrols moving silently, but inside, for a few brief hours, they found shelter. Cale allowed himself a moment of relief, though he knew the next day would bring new challenges. He looked at the widow, her eyes full of hope and fear, and he realized he had chosen this path and now he could not turn back. They were his responsibility, and he would protect them, even if it meant facing the entire city alone.
Shadows of pursuit. Cale woke before dawn, the air cold and still, the children were asleep. Curled close to the widow, he quietly checked the building's entrances, every corner, every broken window. Something told him they were not safe, not even for a moment. The hum of distant engines made him tense, a warning that danger was near. He whispered softly to the widow, "We must move soon, before they find us." Her eyes opened slowly. Fear and trust mixed in her gaze. She nodded, gathering her children close. "I will follow you anywhere." Cale led them out through a side exit, careful not to make a sound. The ruins stretched before them, dark alleys and collapsed buildings forming a maze. Every step was a risk, every shadow a possible threat. The children's hands gripped his tightly, their small faces pale and scared. Cale's heart pounded as he listened, searching for the faintest sound of patrols. Suddenly, a distant shout echoed, harsh and alien. Cale froze, pressing the children and widow against a crumbling wall. The patrols were close, faster than he had expected, relentless in their hunt. He scanned the street and spotted a narrow tunnel, half hidden under debris. Without hesitation, he led them inside, crawling through the dark. The tunnel was tight, walls pressing on their sides. The children whimpered, but Cale kept them moving, urging them silently. At the end, a small chamber opened, damp and dark, but safe for now. Cale let them catch their breath, his mind racing with plans. He knew staying here too long was dangerous. The patrols would search every ruin, every street. He needed a safe place far from the city, a place no one would expect. The widow looked at him, her eyes full of fear and hope. Cale said quietly, "We can make it, but we must be careful, very careful." Suddenly, the children screamed, pointing at a shadow that moved across the wall. Cale tensed, reaching for them, but it was only a rat, small and fast. The children laughed nervously, but Cale forced a smile, hiding his tension. He knew the patrols were waiting outside, and the city was alive with threats. He couldn't stop, couldn't rest, not while they were still in danger. He decided to head for an old transport tunnel, abandoned long ago. It would take them outside the city, away from the patrols. Cale led the way, moving swiftly but quietly. The children followed, their steps careful, trusting him completely. The widow stayed close, whispering soft encouragement to the children. Cale felt a strange warmth in his chest, a bond growing stronger with every step. As they entered the transport tunnel, a sudden sound froze them all. A patrol drone appeared at the entrance, its red light scanning the darkness. Cale held the children close, ducking behind a pile of debris. The widow clutched them tightly, whispering prayers he could not hear. The drone hovered, its sensors sweeping the chamber. Cale counted each second, heart pounding, waiting for the perfect moment. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the drone moved on, leaving them in tense silence. Cale exhaled slowly, his hands still trembling. The children looked at him with wide eyes, trusting, afraid. The widow's lips trembled, but she managed a small nod. Cale whispered, "We are not safe yet, but we are closer to freedom, together." They continued through the tunnel, each step a small victory against the city that hunted them. And for the first time, Cale felt something he hadn't felt before: responsibility, courage, and hope all at once.
Crossing the danger zone, Cale led the widow and her children through the transport tunnel. The walls damp and cold, every step echoed softly, and he feared the sound might reach patrols outside. The children clung to him, their small hands trembling, eyes wide with fear. Even the widow moved cautiously, whispering to them, "Stay close, stay quiet." The tunnel stretched further than Cale had expected, twisting and turning like a serpent. He paused at each junction, listening carefully for movement above or around. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound a potential threat. A soft hum grew louder as they approached the tunnel's exit. Cale froze, pressing the children to the ground, the widow beside him. A patrol drone hovered near the exit, its red light cutting through the darkness. Cale's mind raced. Turning back was impossible. Moving forward was risky. The children whimpered softly, sensing the danger. He whispered to them, "Hold your breath, stay close, don't make a sound." The drone's light swept across the tunnel entrance, stopping just inches from where they hid. Kale could see the sensors scanning every corner, every shadow. His heart pounded in his chest, each second stretching endlessly. Then, with a sudden movement, Kale slid the children and widow behind a pile of debris. The drone's light passed over them, the hum fading as it moved on. Kale exhaled slowly, relief mixing with fear. He knew the city was still dangerous, but the tunnel would give them a chance to escape. He stood carefully, brushing dust from the children's clothes. "Almost there," he whispered. "Just a little more, and we are out of the city." The tunnel opened into a large chamber, abandoned years ago. Old transport pods lay scattered, some broken, some intact. Kale led them inside, using the shadows to hide their movements. The children sank to the ground, exhausted, but still alert. The basit. Widow knelt beside them, holding her youngest, her eyes filled with tears. Kale checked their path, noticing a faint light at the other end, an exit to the outside world. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the chamber. Kale's head snapped toward the sound, every muscle tensed. The children gasped, holding each other close. The widow's face went pale, whispering, "They found us." Kale peered into the darkness, spotting 2 patrol drones moving fast toward them, red lights glowing, sensors sweeping the chamber relentlessly. Kale grabbed the children, holding them tightly. He looked at the widow, determination in his eyes. "We move now, no hesitation." He sprinted toward the faint light, the children and widow following. The drone's hum grew louder, alarms starting in the distance. Metal sparks flew from broken transport pods as Kale leaped over obstacles. The children stumbled, but Kale lifted them one by one, urging them forward. The exit was closer now, a faint breeze brushing against Kale's face. He pushed forward, ignoring the pain in his legs, ignoring the fear. The patrol's lights swept the chamber, almost catching them several times. Kale's hands ached from holding the children, but he did not stop. The widow's voice trembled, whispering encouragement. Almost free. Finally, they reached the tunnel's exit. Stepping out into the early dawn, the city's ruins stretched behind them, dangerous and dark. In front, the land was open, empty, silent, a chance to escape. The children fell to the ground, exhausted but alive. The widow held them close, her tears falling freely. Kale knelt beside them, catching his breath, watching the city from a distance. For the first time, hope felt real, a fragile, shining thread against the darkness. But Kale knew their journey was not over. The patrols would not stop searching, and the land ahead held new dangers. Still, he looked at the widow, at the children, and promised silently, "I will not let anything hurt you, not ever." And in that moment, the small group stood together.
Bound by fear, by hope, and by the courage of one human willing to face the darkness, the forest of whispers, Kale led the widow and children into the dense forest at the edge of the ruins. The morning sun barely pierced the thick canopy, casting long shadows that danced with every step. The children clung to him, their eyes darting nervously at every rustle of leaves. The widow held the youngest close, whispering soft words of comfort. Her voice trembling, Kale moved cautiously, scanning the trees. Listening for the faintest sound of pursuit. The patrol drones had vanished from sight, but he knew they would not give up easily. Every branch snapping underfoot felt like an alarm bell. Every distant caw of a bird made him tense. The forest seemed alive, watching, waiting, and the shadows felt like enemies. They came to a small stream, its water clear and cold. Kale knelt, letting the children drink and cool their faces. The widow sat nearby, her hands trembling as she touched the water. Kale scanned the forest again, noting the safest path forward. "This way," he whispered, pointing to a narrow trail winding deeper into the trees. The children followed silently, trusting him completely. As they walked, whispers seemed to drift through the forest, soft, almost human. Kale's brow furrowed, wondering if it was the wind, or something else. The forest had a strange energy, almost like it was alive. The children shivered, sensing the unease. The widow whispered, "Do you feel it too?" Kale nodded slightly, holding his hand over the children's heads. "Stay close, stay quiet." Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the shadows, deep and dangerous. Kale froze, moving in front of the children, his eyes scanning for movement. A pair of glowing eyes appeared between the trees, watching them silently. The children gasped, fear rooting them to the spot. The widow clutched the youngest, her heart pounding, whispering, "It's okay, stay calm." Kale slowly stepped forward, trying to assess the creature. It was large, covered in dark fur, with teeth sharp and glinting in the faint light. It did not attack immediately, just watched, calculating. Kale's mind raced, thinking of how to protect the children without making a sound. He remembered the small knives he carried and positioned himself defensively. The creature circled them, growling softly, the forest silent around them, Cale kept his voice low. "We mean no harm, stay back." The children pressed against him, trembling. The widow's eyes were wide, fear and hope mingling. The creature's growl deepened, but it did not charge. Instead it turned and vanished into the forest. Cale let out a silent breath, tension leaving him slowly. The children exhaled shakily, realizing they were still alive. Cale knew the forest was not entirely safe, but it gave them cover. He led them deeper, past thick trees and tangled roots. The children's footsteps were careful, their eyes alert. The widow whispered, "We will survive. We will reach safety." Cale nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on him. Each step forward was a promise, a vow to protect them at all costs. As night fell, they found a small clearing, a natural shelter beneath overhanging rocks. Cale arranged the children and widow carefully, keeping watch as darkness settled. The forest whispered around them, strange sounds echoing in the night. Cale stayed alert, ready for anything, his mind sharp. He glanced at the widow, her face pale in the moonlight. "You are safe for now," he whispered, though he knew the forest held unknown dangers. The children huddled close, trusting him completely, and Cale realized, no matter how dark the forest, no matter how strong the threat, he would not let anything harm them, not now, not ever.
The hidden enemy. Cale woke before sunrise, the forest quiet, except for the soft rustle of leaves. The children were still asleep, huddled together under the overhanging rocks. The widow's breathing was steady, but Cale knew her fear was not gone. He checked the perimeter, scanning for any signs of patrols or predators. The forest gave them cover, but danger was never far. He whispered softly, "We must keep moving before they track us here." The widow stirred, opening her eyes. "Where will we go?" she asked, her voice trembling. Cale knelt beside her. "Somewhere safe, away from the city, away from hunters." The children woke slowly, rubbing their eyes, their trust in Cale unspoken but complete. Cale gave them small nods, reassurance in his silent presence. They moved carefully along a narrow path, branches scraping against their skin. Every sound of the forest made the children tense. Cale kept his eyes sharp, ears listening, ready to react to the slightest threat. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted, a trap hidden by leaves and roots. Cale leaped forward, pulling the children back just as a net of thin wires snapped. The trap was clever, designed to catch them without warning. Cale's heart raced, realizing someone had been watching them. The widow clutched his arm, whispering, "They followed us." Cale nodded grimly, scanning the trees for movement. Shadows shifted between the trunks, distant voices whispering, alien in tone. The children trembled, fear in their eyes. Cale whispered, "We must run now," and led them through the forest, zigzagging between trees. They reached a small creek, water rushing over smooth stones. Cale paused, listening, his senses alert. The voices were closer now, patrols or scouts searching for them relentlessly. The children clung to him tightly, the widow's hands pressed against their backs. Cale knew the forest offered hiding, but only temporarily. He needed a plan, a place far from the hunters, a sanctuary. Suddenly, a sharp whistle pierced the air, cutting through the forest silence. Cale froze, recognizing it as a signal, an alarm to others nearby. Red lights flickered in the distance, patrol drones scanning the trees. The widow gasped, pulling the children close. "They are everywhere." Cale's mind raced, calculating their next move. He spotted a small cave, hidden beneath thick vines and rocks. Without hesitation, he led them inside, crawling carefully through the narrow entrance. Inside the cave, darkness swallowed them, shadows pressing close. Cale held the children, whispering, "Stay quiet, stay still." The widow's eyes scanned the walls, panic and relief mixing. Outside, the patrols moved cautiously, their footsteps crunching on dry leaves. Cale listened, every sound amplified in the dark silence of the cave. The children shivered, but Cale kept them calm, telling them stories softly, distracting them from fear. Hours passed, the patrols finally moved away, their search slow and methodical. Cale waited until every sound faded before allowing movement. He led them deeper into the cave, finding a small dry corner to rest. The widow laid the children down, brushing their hair from their faces. Cale watched them, a fierce, protective determination burning in his chest. Every shadow, every whisper, every sound in the forest was a threat. But Cale knew he could face it all, for them, for their safety. As night fell, the forest around the cave seemed alive with whispers and movement. Cale kept watch, never letting his guard down. The widow slept lightly, children dreaming but still alert in their hearts. Cale's mind wandered, thinking of the danger ahead, and yet he felt a strange strength in the group, a bond growing between them. He whispered softly, "We will survive this, together." And in the darkness of the hidden cave, they clung to hope, waiting for the next challenge.
The betrayal in the shadows, Cale waited silently in the cave. The children huddled close, the widow rested beside them, her breathing shallow, every muscle tense. The forest outside was quiet, but Cale knew danger could strike at any moment. He checked the children repeatedly, their small faces pale but trusting. Every shadow outside seemed to move, every rustle made him grip his knife tighter. Hours passed, and Cale's mind wandered, thinking of the city they had left behind, the patrols, the drones, the traps. They were relentless. The widow whispered softly, "Will they ever stop hunting us?" Cale shook his head, "Not until we are far, far away." The children slept lightly, murmuring in their dreams. Cale felt their fear and their hope mixing in the cave like fire and water. Suddenly, a soft sound reached his ears, faint but distinct. The widow froze, eyes wide, whispering, "Someone is here." Cale's heart pounded as he scanned the darkness. A figure emerged from the shadows, moving slowly toward them. It was not a patrol, not a drone, but a lone stranger, cloaked and careful. Cale stepped forward, knife ready, children behind him. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice low and firm. The stranger lifted a hand, showing no weapon. "I am a friend," he said, voice calm. Cale's eyes narrowed, mistrust burning. The stranger continued, "I know a safe place, far from the hunters, far from the city." The widow looked at Cale, hope and fear in her eyes. Cale hesitated, sensing something wrong, but the desperation in their hearts pushed him forward. He led the group carefully, following the stranger through narrow paths in the forest. The children whispered questions, but Cale hushed them, sensing danger. The forest seemed darker here, thicker, almost alive. Suddenly, the stranger stopped, turning to Cale with a slight smile. "I must tell you the truth," he said, eyes glinting. Cale stiffened, sensing the betrayal before the words came. The stranger revealed a communicator, sending a signal to unknown patrols. Cale's heart sank, the trap now clear, the danger closer than ever. The widow gasped, clutching the children, fear mixing with disbelief. Cale stepped in front of them, knife ready. "Why are you doing this?" The stranger shrugged, "Orders, and rewards. You cannot stop what is coming." Cale's mind raced, thinking of a way to escape. The children clung to him, tiny hands pressing against his chest. The widow whispered, trembling, "Cale, we are lost." Cale shook his head, determination burning in his eyes. "No. Not yet," he said, voice low but firm, "We fight. We survive." Suddenly, a noise erupted in the forest, branches snapping. The patrols were arriving faster than expected, red lights glowing through the trees. The stranger faltered, realizing Cale's defiance, but it was too late. Cale grabbed the children, holding them close, and the widow followed. He ran with speed and precision, zigzagging through the dense forest. The stranger tried to block the path, but Cale dodged skillfully. Branches whipped at their faces, mud clinging to their clothes. The patrols' voices grew louder, shouts mixing with mechanical hums. Cale led them toward a cliffside he had noticed earlier, a potential escape. The children gasped, holding tightly to each other. The widow's eyes filled with tears, fear and hope battling within her. Cale whispered, "Jump when I say." Together, the patrols closed in, the stranger chasing, but Cale timed everything. He held the children close, eyes scanning for the perfect moment. "Now!" he shouted, and they leaped into the river below. Cold water hit them, shocking but saving them from capture. The current carried them away, the patrol stopping at the cliff edge, unable to follow. The widow clutched the children, tears streaming, whispering, "We are alive, we are alive." Cale surfaced, holding the youngest in his arms. The children clung to him, soaked but safe.
The last stand. Cale pulled the children and the widow from the river's edge, shivering and soaked. The current had carried them far from the patrols, but he knew they were not safe yet. The forest behind them was filled with whispers, shadows moving between the trees. The widow clutched the youngest, her fear now replaced with determination. Cale scanned the area, looking for shelter, a place to rest before the hunters returned. Ahead, a cliff opened to a hidden valley, sunlight breaking through the morning mist. Cale led them carefully down the slope, every step measured. The children followed, silent but trusting him completely. The widow whispered, "Cale, do you think they will stop chasing us?" Cale shook his head, eyes hard. "Not until they know we are gone, or they are stopped." His hand rested on the youngest, feeling the small heartbeat against his chest. He knew the hunters would not give up easily, not until the reward was claimed. Suddenly, the forest behind them erupted with noise. The patrols had discovered their escape, shouting orders and moving in formation. Cale's heart pounded, but he did not panic. He gathered the children and widow behind a large boulder, whispering, "Stay low, stay quiet." The shadows of the hunters moved closer, red lights flashing, weapons raised. Cale's mind raced, thinking of a plan, any plan, to protect them. He noticed the terrain ahead, a narrow gorge, rocky and steep, a risky path, but one that could slow the hunters. Cale whispered, "We move together. Fast." The children nodded, eyes wide but trusting. The widow's hands held his arm, trembling. "Lead us, Cale." He nodded, and they ran, feet slipping on loose stones, branches scratching faces. The patrols pursued, but the gorge slowed them, their heavy boots clanging on rock. Cale kept glancing back, ensuring the children stayed close. The youngest stumbled, Cale caught. Hit him instantly, never breaking stride. The widow gasped, helping the older children over rocks and roots. Cale's muscles burned, but he pressed forward, every step a fight for survival. Suddenly, a drone hovered above, scanning, red light piercing the trees. Cale ducked behind a large rock, whispering, "We must move now, or we are trapped." The patrols shouted, drawing closer, unaware of the narrow path ahead. Cale gritted his teeth, timing their next move carefully. He led them through a small tunnel, hidden by vines and rocks. The children followed silently, the widow close, hearts pounding, breath sharp. The tunnel opened to a hidden plateau, sunlight washing over them. Cale stopped, finally giving the children a moment to rest. The patrols reached the tunnel entrance, weapons raised, unable to follow without risk. Cale smiled faintly, relief mixing with exhaustion. The widow knelt, brushing the mud from the children, whispering, "We made it. We made it." The children hugged Cale tightly, their trust complete. Cale's heart swelled with fierce protectiveness, knowing the hardest part was over. For now, but Cale knew the hunters would not give up, not entirely. He looked at the valley, the hidden plateau, and the wide forest beyond. "This is our chance," he whispered, voice steady, "to find safety, to survive together." The widow nodded, eyes bright despite tears. "We will not lose hope, not again." The children looked up at Cale, trust shining in their small eyes. Cale felt the weight of promise, the responsibility that had grown heavier with every step, and he knew, no matter the danger, no matter the enemy, he would protect them. Until the end, until their hearts were safe. The wind swept across the plateau, carrying whispers of the forest behind. Cale tightened his grip on the youngest, and the group moved forward, each step a declaration, each breath a vow. The hunters behind would fade into memory if Cale's courage held, and in that moment, amidst danger and exhaustion, hope flickered brighter than ever.
The valley stretched before them, unknown but full of possibility. Cale whispered, "Together, always together," and they stepped into the future, a new dawn. Cale led the children and the widow through the hidden valley, every step careful, the forest behind them now silent. The hunters slowed, unable to reach this place. The sunlight warmed their faces, giving a fragile sense of hope. The children's hands clung to Cale, trusting him completely. The widow walked beside him, eyes scanning the horizon. Relief and wonder in her gaze. They found a small stream, water clear and fresh, flowing over smooth stones. Cale helped the youngest drink, laughing softly at his surprised face. The children laughed too, small giggles echoing across the valley. For the first time in days, fear lifted, replaced by fragile joy. The widow knelt, touching the water, whispering, "We are safe, truly safe." Cale nodded, but his eyes remained alert. Trained to the forest, to danger, they moved further, finding a grove of trees, fruit hanging low and ripe. Cale gathered food for the children, careful to keep them nourished and strong. The widow smiled softly, a rare light in her tired eyes. The children's laughter grew, small steps exploring, chasing insects. Cale watched them, heart full of protection and pride. He realized how much they had come to rely on him, and how much he cared for them. As the sun rose higher, the forest seemed less threatening, more alive. Birdsong filled the air, a soft melody of life. Continuing despite danger, Cale found a small cave at the base of a hill, dry and sheltered, perfect for the night. The widow arranged a soft bed of leaves for the children, smiles on their small faces. Cale took watch, but inside, he felt a rare peace. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future here, safe, together. Night fell, and the valley glowed under stars, silver. Our light spilling over the trees. The children slept soundly, dreaming of warmth and safety. The widow rested against Cale, whispering, "Thank you for everything." Cale shook his head softly. "I only did what I had to. I could not leave you alone." Her eyes glistened, tears of gratitude, and she whispered, "You gave us life again." Cale felt a warmth in his chest, a connection stronger than fear or danger, a bond forged in survival, trust, and hope, unbreakable in the darkest hours. The night was calm, yet Cale remained vigilant. The hunters might come again, but the valley was hidden, the path unknown. He held the children close, feeling their hearts beat with trust and love. The widow rested, finally allowing herself to breathe without fear. Cale whispered softly, "We will build a life here, together, free from the past." She smiled, nodding, "And we will never be alone again." The children stirred, sensing the promise in his words, eyes bright even in sleep. Dawn broke, painting the valley in golden light. Cale looked around, the hidden forest stretching, alive and protective. The children ran ahead, laughter echoing like music. The widow followed, smiles and tears mingling, a new life beginning. Cale stepped forward, hand extended to the widow, holding their future together. He knew the journey was not over, but hope was now their guide. For the first time, Cale felt true peace, surrounded by those who had become family. The valley seemed endless, possibilities stretching like the sky. Cale whispered again, voice firm and certain, "We will survive. We will thrive." The widow placed her hand in his, a silent vow shared. The children ran ahead, free and laughing, hearts unburdened for the first time. Cale followed, carrying the weight of protection, love, and hope. And as the sun rose higher, they stepped forward together into a life of safety, trust, and a family forged from courage.